Welcome back to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Shane Joseph, joined this week by John. How you doing, John?
Hey, Shane, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing all right. And this week we are also joined by Nick. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on again.
No problem. So this week we're going to get right into the news. We've got some big news to share. We got John here, our resident Dollywood expert. And he's here to give us the scoop on all the new touch-ups and new information on lightning rods. So John, you went to a special event, so kind of talk to us about what you found out about lightning rod.
Yes, so they let me back into the park this weekend for the ACE Southeast Region Smoky Mountain Coaster Fest, which they have every year about mid-November. And so this year was, of course, a little bit different, like everything else in the world right now. But one of the big things, we were told beforehand that we were not going to learn any news on lightning rod, which if you're haven't been following along at home, it's been closed for a couple months now, and it was, I guess, maybe a month ago, Nick. I know you were planning to go in October. They put a sign out front of the coaster that says Lightning Rod is closed for the balance of 2020 as it receives an upgrade from manufacturer Rocky Mountain Construction, and then it says in 2021, lightning strikes twice. And so, that sent the community into tizzy, trying to figure out what that means. What is striking twice? Trying to decipher that. And so, during the event, one of the activities on the itinerary was Q&A session with one of upper-ranking member of the Dollywood team. We'll call him Lloyd, as he requested, to protect his identity. But we basically got a really surprisingly rather in-depth scoop on what we can expect with Lightning Rod in 2021. So I'll just go through it at a kind of a line by line as far as what we were told. Basically, the ride is being retracked completely. It's going to be a mix of RMC's, Rocky Mountain Construction's topper track and their iBox track. So the topper track is what's currently on Lightning Rod, which is where, Nick, I know you did a really great piece on the site about the differences between, traditional wooden coaster track, RMC's topper track, and then the iBox track, which is all steel.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, I'll just quickly explain the differences between the types of roller coaster track that we're talking about here. So a traditional wooden roller coaster is comprised of 8 layers of wood. You have 6, and then the top 2 layers are wider so that they overhang a little bit. And that overhang is where the upstop wheels would go, and those are the wheels on the underside of the track that lock the cars onto the track so they don't fall off. There's a thin layer of steel on top of that and on the sides of the track. So the track, if you cut a section of it, it kind of looks like an upside down L shape. The ledgers or the cross ties are also made of wood, and those are the parts that run across the rails to keep them a certain distance from each other to keep the pitch of the rails. So those 8 layers of wood is called the stack. So now Rocky Mountain Construction, the manufacturer of Lightning Rod, they take the top 2 layers of the stack, and instead of using wood, they use steel. So you have the 6 lower layers of wood, and then the top 2 are steel. And then the cross ties are also steel. Now, Rocky Mountain Construction, or RMC, has also invented the Iron Horse track, where instead of taking a tube or a steel pipe and bending that into the shape, they start with flat rectangular pieces of steel, and they use a plasma cutter and cut out all these track pieces and then weld them together to get the same kind of upside down L shape as a wooden coaster, except now it's made of all steel.
And so Lightning Rod will have a mix of topper track and iBox track. So I know that's going to, just sit down and buckle up for the debates and arguments over what will constitute hybrid wood and steel, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, traditionally roller coasters are classified by the track, not the support structure. So like a coaster like Gemini at Cedar Point, the supports are all wood, but the track is still tubular steel rail, so we would call that a steel coaster. So Lightning Rod, with this topper track, you've got 25% of the stack is steel. So is that a wood coaster or a steel coaster? And now you're going to have topper track sections and Iron Horse sections. So, yep, that's going to be a fun debate. What else, John?
So that's being done. They are hoping to have it done by opening day of 2021, which typically in years past, Dollywood usually opens for spring break, which is like mid-March. The guys at RMC have already been down to the park. They've started working on it. Again, it's going to be a full retracking. The topper track is going to go in some of the areas with less stress, and the iBox will be in some of those more dynamic sections of the ride with that are kind of subjected to a little more force, which if you've been on Lightning Rod, there's a lot of sections in that ride that are fairly forceful. So
I was just going to ask before we get into the next part. So having ridden Lightning Rod a bunch, where would you guess that there would be iBox track as opposed to topper track?
Well, I know that there was a year or two ago, there was a spot at the bottom of the first drop that had gotten a little rough, and I think they did some work there, and so I would assume that at the bottom of the first drop, possibly the quad down, which is the best element on that coaster, and some of the best 10 or 15 seconds of any roller coaster experience I've ever been on in my entire life. But so I would say maybe that. I know the last turnaround before leading into the brake run, I know that is the train just has so much speed going into that element, so I would imagine that might be a candidate for iBox. If you've been on Lightning Rod, it's such a high octane. It does not stop. It's completely relentless, and so I think the argument could be made that all of it could have iBox, but that's not the case. But it is going to be, as we were told, completely retracked, just not all iBox.
All right. Well, what else did you find out that are going to be some updates coming to Lightning Rod?
Yeah. So thankfully for me, I had heard rumors of inversions or this or that, and so fundamentally the coaster is not changing in regard to its layout. It is going to be, they're not adding any elements or taking anything away. It is strictly going to be a retracking. The launch will be the same. The individual who was sharing this information said that they were, if anything, the launch was going to be more consistent. And that's really their goal with this, is to make the ride more reliable and more comfortable. And I think for me, it's just not the same when you go to the park and Lightning Rod's not there. So I'm all for them taking this time to really invest in and hopefully making the ride more reliable. But I'm glad that they're not renaming it, they're not rebranding it. I know there was a lot of Lightning Rod merch on sale at the gift shop, and people were wondering about that. But no, it's pretty strictly going to be just a retracking. So.
What year did it open again? Was that 2016?
Yeah, 2016. So
it's
coming up on 5 years.
Has a major coaster this young ever had this much modification or retracking put into it? I wonder.
I don't think so. The only thing that I can think of that's similar is what they did to White Lightning at Fun Spot. Now has that GCI metal
Titan
track on it. Yeah, Titan track. But that I don't think, certainly not as new as 2016. So yeah, this is probably the fastest turnaround that I've seen for updates. Yeah,
I think the Titan track was just in one or two areas, wasn't it? Whereas this sounds like it's going to be the entire ride.
Yep.
I wonder, did they just design the ride too aggressively, or should it have been built with the iBox track from the beginning?
I secretly hope that someday there will be a tell-all book that chronicles the entire life of Lightning Rod from start to finish. But I definitely think it's going to be the first RMC that gets RMC'd, as people have already said that. So, but this coaster was so unprecedented. Even launch aside,
the first launched wooden coaster.
Yeah, and so and it's such a complex. The word dynamic was said over and over yesterday, and I think that really is a great word to use to describe to describe that coaster. And then you think of the terrain that it's on. It's just there's a lot of moving pieces there, and it's an intense ride. It is. I think people are always a little surprised when I tell them my favorite wooden coaster in the world is at Dollywood, but it's if you've it's a beast, and I'm just excited. I hope that it won't be in the future where you go and you're like, well, I hope it's open today. And,
Yeah.
you know, I'm lucky in that I'm only a few hours away, but for people who, you know, come from all over the country to ride it, it's a big...
From Ohio.
Right, from Ohio. It can be a big letdown. So I'm glad that that's one of the things I really like about Dollywood is they build the new flashy attractions and huge expansions like Wildwood Grove, but then also they are, and we can get into this later, but another kind of factoid from that Q&A session was just the retracking and track work that goes on. It's been going on Thunderhead. I mean, it's almost like a brand new ride, and the track work they've done to that. They're doing some to Mystery Mine. I mean, it's just they are a park that really gives their rides some TLC, and I think it's those things that you can't really market that well besides, you know, to coaster enthusiasts, but I think it really goes to show how committed they are to how that guest experience. So I'm excited to see them doing this rather than just kind of keeping it propped up and
right.
It's great to see them taking the initiative to fix it.
Yeah.
Make it better.
Some parks wouldn't do that. So speaking of Dollywood as a whole, both of you have had experiences at Dollywood recently. We'll start with John. So how did the rest of the event go? What did you get to do? What were some special things? Just how did you feel about the day in general?
Yeah, it was great. The weather was perfect. I mean, this mid-November is always a toss-up. I've been when it's been very mild and when it's been very cold. So the weather was great. This year we got to park in the preferred parking lot, which it doesn't take a lot to please me, but not having to walk as far, take the tram to the front entrance, that alone was worth the price of admission. We got there about 8:30, and then we walked back to Craftsman's Valley area for breakfast. And then we got ERT on Blazing Fury, which is, of course, the very classic campy indoor roller coaster from the late 70s. And so we got to ride that for 30 minutes with the lights off and then 30 minutes with the lights on. And 2 years ago, I got to go and do a backstage behind-the-scenes tour with the lights on. But this was actually my first time riding it with the lights on, it's just so cool. I love that coaster. It's I don't know. There's just nothing like it except maybe Fire in the Hole at Silver Dollar City. But so that was fun. Then we got they opened Wild Eagle for us a little early for us as well. So that was great. And then after that, we pretty much had free time until that afternoon. We had the Q&A session, which was great. Had a lot of great questions, and the resident Dollywood expert who was there, you know, is just full of insight and information and trivia. So that was really enjoyable. And then the personal highlight of the day, I think, was the free cinnamon bread social outside of Thunderhead. And I tweeted, I'm usually fairly restrained when it comes to cinnamon bread. Like, I know when to stop, but I said, this is 2020, there are no rules, there are no limits, and I ate an entire loaf of cinnamon bread, and I have no regrets, and I will cherish that moment for the rest of my life. And so then I walked around the park once, because after that was Thunderhead, ERT, an hour of that, so I wanted to make sure that I was all, ready to go for that. Oh, we had the fireworks as well. Since this year there's no parade, and I should say this is during their Smoky Mountain Christmas event, which started last weekend. And so this year they're having a nightly fireworks show on the weekend. So we got to see that, and then got an hour with Thunderhead all to ourselves. So very fun day. Considering everything, all the craziness of this year, it was great to kind of have that some semblance of normalcy in this event. That's always a really great time.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Nick, you also went to Dollywood fairly recently. Yep. How did your experience go?
It was great. So we went last month in middle of October. We actually stayed in the Dollywood cabins, which, if you've never stayed before, I highly recommend it. I actually just wrote an article for the website called 7 Reasons Why You Should Stay in the Cabins. So if you want more details, but One of the nice things is you have the option of having a length of stay tickets. So every day that you're staying in the cabin, you can go visit the park, and you don't have to make a reservation. You have priority access. And there's also another entrance. Like there's the main entrance to the park, and there's kind of a side entrance on that path that goes up towards Thunderhead. So any guests staying in the resort, the Dreammore Hotel, and the cabins, they can go and park in the exclusive parking lot there and then go into that entrance, which is really nice during the pandemic era, because there was, maybe at most one family in front of us, so we could pretty much just drive up, park close, and then just walk right into the park. So it was really easy to get in and out. And so we were there during the Harvest Festival, which I had never been to before. So I'd say that during a normal operating day, Dollywood's probably one of the most beautiful parks in the country on any other day. But then you go to the park in the fall, and you add in all the fall decorations and the Halloween decorations, and it just makes the park even better.
Right.
And then at nighttime you have the pumpkin luminites, where they have a lot of like big pumpkin displays that are all lit up, and it's really cool.
Well, that's awesome. Did you get to try out any of the rides when you were there also?
Yep. Of course, Lightning Rod was down, we booked this trip, I think, like back in May, like way earlier in the summer, in the hopes that things would be better. And then also, like at that time, Lightning Rod was operating a lot more consistently. And then I think in August, it closed for a little bit. And then I think September was when they said it was going to be down for the rest of the year. So it was really disappointing, but like I think it's better that we knew in advance that we weren't going to get to ride it, rather than going there and having it like close in your face. Yeah. And I guess it kind of made the trip a little less stressful, because we weren't like, are we going to get on it or not? Like we just knew like, oh no, it's not even an option.
Yeah, it's not like you have to join a virtual queue every day at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. not knowing if you're going to get on the ride or not.
Yeah. Right. You have that's a story for another day. If you want to read that story, go check out John's Disney article over on Coaster101.
Well, speaking of reservations, one thing I did not expect was you needed one to ride the Dollywood Express, which is, in my opinion, one of the best train rides in a theme park in the country. So the capacity of the train is reduced a lot. So first of all, they're only sitting every 3 rows. So one row of guests, 2 empty rows, and the next row of guests. And before, whereas maybe you have 2 or 3 groups of people in one row, now you're only putting one group of people. So you may only have 2 people in a row instead of 6. The capacity of the train is greatly reduced. So what they were doing is they were giving out a paper ticket. So you had to go to the train station at some point and get a paper ticket for a return time. The train runs about every 45 minutes starting at noon. And what they were doing is they were loading every car except for the last one. They were leaving that empty. So they did have a standby line for the unfortunate people that didn't know that you needed a reservation. Because it wasn't really advertised anywhere. We just got lucky that we stumbled upon it. So if you worked your way around the park and were thinking, you'd ride the train later in the day, and you didn't know you needed a return time ticket, then you were basically hosed. So they did have a standby line, but it was probably one of the longest lines I've ever seen in person, even though there were only maybe 50 people in line, because the train only runs every 45 minutes, and they were only taking maybe a couple groups of, maybe 3 groups of people from the standby line every time the train ran. So you could just, count the groups of people in front of you and see like, wow, this wait is 5 hours long, even though there's only 50 people in this line. If you're going to Dollywood, definitely head over to the train station first if you want to ride the train, so you can get that return time. So that was a little unexpected, but luckily we got a ticket and we got to ride it. And even during these tough times, it was a good time at Dollywood.
Well, that's awesome. I think that's going to do it for this episode. Rather quick episode this week. Eric, as you know, is away doing his other podcast. Andrew had some other stuff going on, but we wanted to do a quick episode to fill everybody in on Dollywood and the news with Lightning Rod. So before we go, I just wanted to mention our annual roller coaster calendar is available to buy right now. We're selling those on our website for $15. That includes shipping. The 2021 calendar has 13 months worth of roller coasters and parks that like Kings Island, Cedar Point, Busch Gardens Tampa is in there also. And the best part is that we're donating 100% of the proceeds to Give Kids the World in Central Florida. Great organization who we've worked with before. Check them out if you don't know anything about Give Kids the World. It's an awesome organization. You can find the link to buy the calendar in the show notes or at c101.co/21calendar or by texting calendar to our number, which is 419-742-2101. Thank you to Ulimi for giving us that text service, so save that number to your phone. If you haven't already, you can also text merch to that number or go to c101.co/shirts to check out some of our awesome Coaster 101 shirt designs. So thank you to everyone for listening. We appreciate your support. For more updates and news like this, follow us on social media at Coaster101. Visit our site, of course. Email us at podcast@coaster101.com. And make sure to rate and subscribe. Thank you once again to JM Music Design for doing our theme song and theme music. Thank you to John and Nick for being our special guests this week. And we will talk to you all next week.